Helping Seniors Television, all about improving quality of life for seniors. If you're a senior, know a senior, or plan to be a senior, then this show is for you. It's all about helping you develop your own aging plan so you can age actively and with dignity. Helping Seniors Television from the Helping Seniors Network of information, education, and resources.
Welcome to Helping Seniors Television. I'm Kerry Fink. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today. On behalf of our president and founder, Joe Steckler, Helping Seniors of Brevard is now in our 13th year of service, and we are here to inform, educate, and connect seniors and their families to resources that will make a difference. And if you've ever been around our president and founder, Joe Steckler, he's 90 years old, retired naval captain. His last command in the Navy was the U.S. Navy retirement home in Gulfport, Mississippi, and he and his lovely wife, Kerry, they decided to retire to the Space Coast, be near the Space Force base and everything with that. And Joe couldn't stay retired, so he created Brevard Alzheimer's Foundation and started working on that and built up Joe's Clubs, which are known throughout the area for the adult daycare services that they offer to give some respite to caregivers and the families, and also to help the folks that are on a dementia journey or an Alzheimer's journey. When Joe retired from that in about 2008, he felt that the work for seniors was only beginning, and I think he's absolutely right. We founded Helping Seniors of Brevard at his insistence, really, in 2011, and since then have been serving the county with a countywide senior information helpline, which is a free call at 321-473-7770. And to share some stats, recently in the past year, that helpline has handled more than 5,450 calls from seniors, the families of seniors, and people who are concerned about seniors. And one of the things along the way that we've talked about over and over, Joe has always been big about, you need to make an aging plan. And I always want to preface this by saying that sounds really complex, but when we live in Florida, we understand having a hurricane plan. It doesn't mean you want a hurricane. It doesn't mean you want a problem of a hurricane. It just means you want to be prepared. And so that's what Helping Seniors really tries to do, is to equip seniors and their family with the information that will help them on that journey. And so today we're going to have a really interesting discussion called Let's Talk Medical. And the reason we're going to have that conversation is because that is actually the first step, at least we say, on building your aging plan, or we like to call it getting your ducks in a row. Step one is getting your medical and wellness plans together, because with your health, you really have everything. So one of the great friends of the Helping Seniors organization is none other than Traci Graf. She's a registered nurse with so much experience in all of this. And I've been a friend of the Helping Seniors organization now for many years, but in particular, has a home care services company, Avid Home Care Services, and really puts her in a unique perspective of helping share some of her experience of what makes aging well. So welcome to the show, Traci. How are you?
I'm good, Kerry. Thanks. I appreciate you having me here.
You know, I wanted to ask you, because we talked a lot about, I think it's relevant for people to know your own personal history, because as I can kind of like count it off on my fingers, you know, I remember you have experience in the OR as a nurse. You have experience as a psych nurse. You have experience you worked for many years helping people with organ transplants and things related to that. And then on top of all that, now you've been in the home care business for quite a while. And one of the things that I think it gives you a unique perspective, having been through all those, viewed the medical profession through all those different lenses or prisms, is we've seen people age well, and you've seen people who haven't aged well. And so it's helped you to kind of create sort of a checklist of things that you really want to watch out for as we age. And that, I think, is very much part of an aging plan. I know as we were talking before the cameras were rolling, maybe one of the first places we begin is we start talking about blood pressure, because you said that's one of those real things that we want to keep a check on as we get older.
Yes, definitely. Like we were talking, there are a couple medical chronic conditions that if people let them get out of control, they may not feel the effects of it happening when it's happening. But like I said to you, if they start to have symptoms secondary to whatever is happening, those are usually irreversible.
Yeah.
So it's really, really important. There's a couple of things in particular that, in my experience, I have seen just ruin people's bodies, and it becomes this cascade of problems that start, and they may plateau at somewhere, but not controlling your blood pressure is so crazy dangerous. You should know what your blood pressure is. You should know the things that will raise it significantly. And, I know we're talking about seniors, but some of these things, I see even in the younger people, people who drink those energy drinks like crazy.
Oh.
You're going to cause yourself an arrhythmia or a stroke.
Wow.
I mean, in my opinion, they're very dangerous. And if you're ever, I even went to get coffee at Dunkin' Donuts one day, and the girl said to me, "Oh, I feel like my heart's going to beat out of my chest. I've had 2 Red Bulls." And I said to her, "You better not have any more." I don't, it's like they just don't even think about their hearts beating more than 120 times a minute and how dangerous that is. But the blood pressure thing, the problem with not controlling your blood pressure is that, and in my experience and my knowledge, it's worse if it's going up and down and spiking than if it just is up and staying up. And the reason is because it beats up, and blood pressure is controlled by the arteries, by the walls of the arteries. So just like a tire has to have a certain amount of pressure in the tire wall to maintain the tire itself and the air in it, the arteries are the exact same way, and they're elastic. So they're changing constantly. They're dilating and constricting constantly to drive blood to different parts of your body.
Uh-huh.
What happens to a piece of elastic if you sit and yank on it 100 times a day as hard as you can?
Sure, you're going to wear it out.
Exactly. And so if you're spiking your blood pressure all day long, chances are you're going to wear out the wall of one of your arteries, and you're going to develop an aneurysm. And if you're lucky, they'll find the aneurysm before you spike your blood pressure one day and blow a hole through the wall of the artery. Wow. So it's very serious. And sometimes the effects are chronic and slow. Other times you're out of here. Yeah. Boom. A ruptured abdominal aortic aneurysm. It's highly unlikely you would survive it. Ruptured aneurysm in your brain, in your heart. People don't think about that that's what's happening when your blood pressure is spiking. I don't know, and I guess maybe I should start polling some of my high blood pressure clients about what is it that you actually think is going to happen to your body with high blood pressure. Because, I had a 92-year-old, she's 92, but her blood pressure, she's logging it, and it's 3 digits, top and bottom number. And I said to her, "Well, I happen to see your blood pressure's here, and that's not good, right?" "It's fine." As she's speaking to me, her face is bright red.
Wow.
Which I know if we took it now, it's going to be triple digits, both numbers.
Wow.
Of course, like I said, she is 92, so it's kind of hard to argue with somebody who's 92 and still walking and talking. But her blood pressure could be better controlled. She could live to be 100.
Right.
So, the other thing is diabetes, which is just hands down, it just ruins your body. And the problem with diabetes, people will tell you, well, what are some of the problems you can have? Well, you could have legs and amputated, and you can go blind, and you can ruin your kidneys. It all comes down, again, to that blood sugar that is not controlled will ruin the arterial wall. So all of the problems that diabetics have that we talk about can all be pointed back to the same origin, being a problem with the artery.
Mm-hmm.
That causes renal artery stenosis, which cuts off the blood flow to your kidneys. It causes blood flow constriction to your eyes, which is what causes the blindness. It causes blood flow constriction to your vessels, which causes amputations and necrosis. It's it's all in that arterial wall. I mean, they're so important that we do what we can to maintain their elasticity and keep them clean, that people just don't realize until it's already happening. And, you know, say, for instance, I have a patient who has high blood pressure and they have a stroke. And they say, well, I don't understand how that happened. And I say to them, well, if you're pushing high pressures of fluid through an old pipe, what are the chances that things are going to flake off and go with the flow? High. Well, at 90, your pipes are old. Yeah. You know, I mean, really, when you try to break it down to that, they understand what I'm talking about, because it really isn't much different. It's complicated, but it's really, my husband's a plumber. So we always joke that between anatomy and plumbing, like, he could understand a lot of the stuff I would talk about with vascular surgery and things like that, because he would immediately be able to liken it to a plumbing problem that they fixed. Right. And he's right, you know. So I just found, and I will say this for Florida, I also noticed this. I started home care up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I had lots of Amish clients, patients. They're patients on that side of home care. And they have terrible diets. Absolutely. Really? Yep. Lots of people are surprised by that, but yes, very bad diets. I mean, if it's not candied, fried, smoked, processed, double fried, candied and fried, they don't eat it. Yeah. You know, so when you walk in as their nurse and they've now been diagnosed with diabetes and you start talking about what they can't eat, they look at you like, I'm going to starve. So I'm going to die. And, you know, but it was, what I noticed is that honestly up there, I used to joke and call it the trifecta, because so many people had the triple, and they all are connected, you know, high blood pressure, diabetes, and chronic kidney disease. Wow. That is a bad trio of chronic conditions to have. I don't notice as much of that here. Yeah. I notice other things here. There seems to be a lot more COPD. There's tons of high blood pressure everywhere. And it's not even really, I mean, the food industry has put sodium in everything we eat, right? I have parents who dump salt on stuff before they taste it. And I say, you can't do that. Right. Well, so-and-so lived to 94 and he did it, and so-and-so lived to 90 and she did it. And I'm like, okay, here's the difference, is that everything they ate was freshly prepared. So the only salt going into that you ate was what they put in it when they cooked it. Good point. And now you dump on it before you put it in your mouth. Everything we eat has salt in it. Every single thing has sodium in it. And unfortunately, some of the levels are crazy. So I used to try to prove this to some of my Amish patients and other patients who want to challenge things. You know, it's like, I don't believe you. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to check your blood pressure right now, and then I'm going to give you about 5 potato chips. I know you eat the whole bag, but I'm going to give you 5. And we're going to wait a few minutes, and we're going to check your blood pressure again. Kerry, even I would sometimes be like, good Lord, I don't know how we don't die if we eat a whole bag of that. Because, I mean, it just shoots it up so high and so fast. And, you know, you think about, I mean, I'm not a big potato chip fan, thank God, but some people, you know, just, of course, bag's empty, well, I'm done. Yeah. You know, and I really don't understand how our bodies handle that, but our bodies are self-correcting constantly, so they try to fix it.
Well, let's kind of spin this the other way around. We've talked about maybe some of the things that we do that are probably not helpful to ourselves, but if we were going to heed the warning, and we're going to do this the right way, what are some steps that we would take that would help our bodies in all these areas that we're talking about, whether it be blood pressure or, you know, I did a radio program fairly recently and was surprised at the statistic that the guest had given me about the percentage of people who are over 65 that have diabetes, which was huge. I think it was like if somewhere
epidemic.
Yeah, it was like 40% or something. But what was really surprising was the amount of people who were pre-diabetic. But the most surprising thing was the amount of people who thought that they were diabetic or pre-diabetic was literally about half of the people that actually were, which means that we either don't know or we're in denial.
Red flags. I mean,
we're in
I
denial.
wonder why we have a problem.
Yeah. So one of the things that we would do from, using all of your experience watching folks in home care, one of the things we would do if we wanted to be successful at reversing this trend or getting it right?
Well, I think I have a couple opinions on that. One is that I think that the hemoglobin A1C is a lab test that we can do that in the past was, I think, really underused in determining what's in control and what's not. So, as a nurse, and of course I'm going to date myself, but typically, we'd come in and we'd look at a log of blood sugars.
Right.
Right. So then you have to think to yourself, and some patients were really good and regimented. Some were all over the place. Did you check that before you ate or after you ate? Did you check that before you took insulin or after you took insulin? And whatever decision you're making, stick to it.
Right.
So that we can understand what's going on. But that's how, and our blood sugar changes as much as our blood pressure. It's up and down all day long.
Right.
So the A1C is a lab test that now the doctors really use as the bigger determining factor of, are you pre-diabetic? Are you diabetic? Are you uncontrolled diabetic? What are you? And some places the A1C normal levels will change based on age.
Okay.
So they've started doing that where they can't expect someone who's 85 to have a normal A1C of someone who's 40.
Right.
We can't.
Right.
So they've adjusted the schedule a little bit, and I'm not totally sure on what the levels are at this point, but typically anything below like 5.5 is normal. I believe something between like 5 and 6.5 maybe is pre-diabetic, but that's how it's worked out. But the hemoglobin A1C, I think people need to know that number. Like, you should know what your hemoglobin A1C is, whether you're diabetic or not. So there's the problem too, people aren't going to the primary care physician. They're not getting regular blood work. And I agree that sometimes it gets a little repetitive, especially if you're younger, but I think maybe we should have some kind of guidelines that say that at 30 and 40, you should have baseline hemoglobin A1C so we know where you are.
Well, and in keeping with that, then, if we're serious about tracking it and doing the right things, and I guess one of your arguments might be that we should be checking our blood pressure on a regular level and maybe keeping up with that. But what are things we might do or choose to do that would help us, I guess, in the battle to lower that blood pressure or lower that A1C?
Avoid processed foods. I mean, there are 1,000,001 diets out there. You can follow the Mediterranean diet, this diet, that diet. The bottom line, honestly, on all of them, is that you have got to get processed foods out of your diet as much as you can. Anything that's in a can, jar, box, complex carbohydrates, junk food. One of the surgeons I used to work with used to say everything in moderation is okay. Maybe. I mean, there are some things that, as just the American diet, soda, regular soda, smoking, high cholesterol foods, and the sodium is out of control. I mean, this number comes from a report I did, or a project I did in nursing school for nutrition. It was years ago, but they had us take fast food places or popular restaurant chains and look at one or two items on the list and look at the nutritional content. Okay, I did McDonald's, and a large McDonald's milkshake at that time, which I bet you it's twice that now, had 1,200 milligrams of sodium in it.
Wow.
1,200 milligrams.
Wow.
And people are like, how's that possible? It's a milkshake. Good question.
Yeah.
Ask McDonald's or the FDA. So it's in everything we eat. It's in things you would never think of.
Yeah.
And it's ruining our arteries, and it's ruining our body secondary to that.
Yeah. So what would you say the steps that we want to take if we're trying to be responsible on our aging plan? You said, okay, let's avoid the processed foods. Let's try to, I had a friend once say, go around the outside of your grocery store.
Yeah, that's a common thing because the inner aisles are terrible.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of the people we're taking care of now, like the generation that I take care of, you know, they eat eggs and bacon and things for breakfast. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. You know, I always learned that if you're eating animal fat, we're animals. We can process that.
Yeah.
It's everything other than an animal fat that we can't process, including, you know, some of the oils that people claim are good, canola oil and things like that. They're not good for you. Olive oil is good for you.
Yeah, you know, it's an interesting dynamic because I think for a long period of time, they would tell us things about be careful with butter, be careful with eggs and things like that. And I guess, you know, that's an interesting discussion.
Yeah.
It's a lot of times, you know, I know the medical professionals love to fuss at us as consumers because we need to do better. But one of the challenges that at least I experience a lot is sometimes things are called good for you one day. They come back a few years later and studies.
Look how much Florida, oh God, I'm going to be hated. Look how much Florida promotes orange juice as being good for us.
Yeah. I've heard that's actually difficult.
Orange juice is one of the worst things we can put in our body.
Really?
It is packed with sugar. It is high carbohydrate count. So like have you ever heard of diabetics that learn how to carb count?
Yeah.
That's a way of controlling diabetes. They're limiting how many carbs they're taking in.
Right.
Because I used to teach patients, look, it's pretty simple. If it's white, don't eat it.
Yeah.
Don't eat it because my body is going to turn it directly into sugar.
Wow.
White bread, white pasta, white rice, potatoes are evil if you're a diabetic. Evil.
Wow.
And we don't I don't know how we don't know this. And I'm not going to say that I've always known it because I have not always known it. But I've learned through the years, and I won't lie to you. Sometimes it's when I see a patient and I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, I cannot let that happen to me. So what are they doing that is causing that? And these are the kind of things that are common denominators among those types of people that I see happening. Again, diabetic education. I'll have a diabetic who's taken, well, I take 45 units insulin a day, and my diabetes is well controlled. No, that's not telling me that you take 45 units of insulin a day tells me that your diabetes is not controlled.
Right.
Regardless of what you think.
Right.
But sometimes, the doctor, they just keep upping the units and never really say to the patient, do you understand that you have some control over this?
Wow. Maybe that's a point that we don't always understand ourselves is just what you've been talking about, whether we're talking about blood pressure, whether we're talking about blood sugar and these kind of areas. We really probably have a lot more control of this than maybe we allow ourselves. And I was talking with somebody literally today who we were talking about the fact that, people look for a prescription that's going to solve rather than maybe getting at the root cause of it.
Right, or eliminating something they're eating to fix it, or taking a walk after dinner.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't understand that sort of mindset because a lot of times there is a simple fix.
Yeah.
But they want to, like you said, they'd rather take a pill, and then they start taking a pill, and then they have a side effect of the pill, and they go back and see the doctor and say, well, I'm having a side effect. And he says, here, we'll take this because this will combat that side effect. And, and then I show up as the home care nurse and where's your meds? And they come out with a box.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait a minute, what is going on? And you start going through them and you're like, well, this is for this, and this is because of this, and this is because of that. And you're still out of control.
Yeah.
So it's, I don't know. I did have a thought when you were talking about something that I could say that was good for helping people with this. But
well, it sounds like really what we want to do is we want to really start looking back at the root, which is, are we eating the right thing?
A lot of things can be fixed with nutrition. And I know what I was going to say is we do have a lot more control over it, I think, than we say. Although I am one of those people that thinks the FDA and the food industry really should have some accountability. I mean, okay, perfect example. There's a double Whopper coming out, I heard, right? And like, Wendy's and them have like triple. Who needs that? Yeah. Who needs that? And what it should come with is a voucher to go to the ER.
Right.
Because that's where you're going to go. I mean, I can't even understand how the human body tolerates eating that much sodium at one time and doesn't like blow out arteries all over the place. But what do? Why is there a double Whopper? Somebody wanted it, right? And people are going to go eat it. So I think that in that sense, I wish that the general public would hold some of those places more accountable on the quality of food. I mean, something big just came out about McDonald's that they're like advertising that we're now giving you higher quality meat. Okay, how long has McDonald's been open?
Yeah. Well, that's
so they've been giving us terrible quality meat for all these years? Yes. Yes.
Well, we're talking with Traci Graf with Avid Home Care Services. One of the things I wanted to ask you, Traci, before we run out of time on today's program, is I wanted to ask you about how people get in touch with you. One of the advantages they get at Avid Home Care Services, you're the one who sits down with a family and kind of evaluates and says, this is what might be good in this situation. How do they get in touch with you?
You can just call the office, 321-392-3400. But yes, I provide what's called care management services to all of our clients at no charge.
No, that's excellent. Well, thank you, Traci, for being with us on today's edition of Helping Seniors TV.
Thanks.
Really encourage you to talk medical, and let's get this right. I'm Kerry Fink for Helping Seniors. We'll see you on the next edition.
I'm Joe Steckler. Thank you for joining our program today. I'd like to remind you that our senior information line is available to you at 321-473-7770. There you can get help and direction that could be helpful for your specific situation or circumstances. The work of helping seniors is very important, but we can't do it alone. That is why our sponsors here in Brevard County are so important. I'd like to thank our many area sponsors, businesses, and medical providers who support the mission of helping seniors that help us carry the cost of our media efforts. If you'd like to join us either as a business partner or simply donate as an individual, we welcome your call at 321-473-7770. You are always welcome to visit our website at www.helpingseniorsofbrevard.org. Thanks so much for your help. It does make a difference.